Thank you for choosing American Pest CEUs. Hi, I'm Sean Reeves. I'm an Associate Certified Entomologist with American Pest CEUs. I've been in the pest management industry since 1999, and I'll be your instructor for today's course. Today's course was compiled by Jack Launius, who has served in the pest management industry since 1990. Let's look at Chapter 12 of the Core Pesticide Training Manual, Professional Conduct. After studying this chapter, you should know how to recognize when a certified applicator must be present during an application from information provided on the label or by regulations. Understand the importance of keeping records of pesticide training for uncertified individuals. Assure that an uncertified individual that you supervise can understand and follow application procedures. Understand the importance of providing detailed guidance for pesticide applications that you supervise. Know your responsibilities in supervising uncertified individuals. Understand the importance of explaining appropriate federal and state laws and regulations to uncertified individuals that you supervise. Know how to communicate with customers and explain realistic expectations of pesticide applications. Know how to describe notification procedures for customers and neighbors prior to applications, e.g., chemical sensitivity registries, restricted entry instructions, post-application requirements. Know how to provide labels and material safety data sheets upon request. Know how to provide notification and signage required by laws and regulations for the durations of restrictions. Know how to address or refer public inquiries about pest and pesticide applications. I just want to take a moment to mention that professional conduct is a huge part of your job as a pesticide applicator. It doesn't matter if you're a supervisor or a technician, the way you conduct yourself is very important. And this is also going to mean communication. If you're a certified applicator or certified operator, how you communicate with your employees is going to be very important. Also, any certified operator, certified applicator, or even technicians are also going to need to understand how important it is on how you communicate with customers. You've got to set the expectations. You have to be the professional. If you don't set the expectations with customers on what they can expect, you're going to have a lot of problems throughout your pesticide career. So make sure you work on a high level of professionalism, you understand your products, and you understand the communication you need with customers. Webster's Dictionary defines professionalism as the conduct, aims, or qualities that characterize or mark a profession or a professional person. Many factors have an influence on the professional conduct of pesticide applicators. It is important that certified pesticide applicators understand the rules and regulations on supervising uncertified employees and how to train employees in proper pest control techniques. And I wanted to stop here for just a moment and talk about becoming a certified applicator. Some states will also call this a certified operator, so don't be confused between the two. They typically are going to mean the same thing. But the bottom line is, before you can become a certified applicator, you're typically going to need some experience. Now, I've seen this as short as 30 days in some states, but typically it's anywhere between 1 and 3 years. So you need to understand your specific state laws on this, because you're usually going to have to take state exams that are going to qualify you to become a certified applicator. You also need to understand, as a certified applicator, you're taking on a lot of responsibility. You're basically going to be in charge of pest control activities a lot of times in this position, so everybody's going to be looking up to you. So make sure you understand the federal laws, the state laws, and make sure you're ready to lead a team of people to go out and do the right things every day. Implementing proper training and pesticide security measures assists the pesticide application business in establishing and maintaining a professional image. People are quite concerned about the safety and health effects associated with pesticides. Therefore, It is extremely important to be able to communicate with customers effectively, accurately, and in a professional manner about the nature of the pest problem, the chemical and non-chemical means to prevent and control pests, and the risk involved if a pesticide is used. And now we are going to get to the topic of supervision. Unless otherwise prescribed by its labeling, a pesticide shall be considered to be applied under the direct supervision of a certified applicator if it is applied by a competent person acting under the instructions and control of a certified applicator who is available if and when needed, even though such certified applicator is not physically present at the time and the place the pesticide is applied. This comes from FIFRA, Section 2E4. This section in FIFRA establishes the minimum federal standard for direct supervision of uncertified individuals. Some states require a certified applicator to be physically present at the application site whenever an uncertified individual applies a restricted use pesticide. Some states require the certified applicator to perform the application, while other states require the certified applicator to be present during the application of any pesticide, i.e., both restricted use and unclassified use. The supervising certified applicator is responsible for the actions of the uncertified person throughout the entire application process, i.e., mixing, application cleanup, and disposal. In some cases, product labels may restrict the use of certain pesticides to certified applicators only. In such instances, an uncertified applicator may assist the certified person, but the actual application must be performed by the person certified in the appropriate pest control category. Just remember this, that supervising certified applicator is the one going to be responsible for those actions of the uncertified person. So just make sure as a certified applicator you're training your people correctly, and you're also monitoring their applications to make sure they're following the label and the law. The phrase, under the direct supervision of, means the act or process whereby the handling and application of a pesticide is made by a competent person, acting under the instructions and control of a certified applicator. The key words are competent person. In this context, competency is defined as being properly qualified to perform functions associated with a pesticide application. Now, when we think about a properly qualified, competent person, you need to know it is essential for supervisors to prepare and train each uncertified person to independently handle and apply pesticides in a reasonable manner. Uncertified applicators need to be every bit as professional as their certified colleagues. It is important that uncertified persons understand basic information such as federal and state pesticide laws and regulations, security and emergency procedures in the event of an incident, the importance of carefully following all label instructions, knowledge about the pesticides and application equipment to be used and the pests to be controlled, the proper use of all personal protective equipment, the need to keep accurate and precise application records, the need to communicate regularly with the certified supervisor. Proper supervision is not merely a single instructional event, but rather a continuing education process. Maintaining good training records helps to assure management that training throughout the employee's career is timely and relevant. Supervision requires continual interaction between the supervisor and the uncertified person. And let's just say at this point, you have to remember these training records are really important. They're going to help you comply with federal and state laws, but also the employee's career is tied to the supervision. So make sure that interaction is continual between that certified supervisor and the uncertified person. That's going to be very important for that uncertified person to grow and get the knowledge and skills they need to go further in their career. Let's talk about pesticide security and supervision. Pesticide security has the mission of protecting people, facilities, and the environment from harm. In pesticide certification and training, pesticide security is about allowing access to pesticides only by competent persons. Pesticide security is important for all pesticide distributors, retailers, and end users, including uncertified individuals. Supervisors, as well as those persons being supervised, must be knowledgeable about security procedures. And I have to tell each and every one of you, talking about security of pesticides is going to be a really big deal throughout your career, and those of you taking exams in the core categories are going to see questions about these security procedures. You're also going to see things like this, where you need to develop a written security plan that includes well-defined communication procedures between the supervisor and the applicator. Given the ability of today's modern communication technologies, such as cell phones, pagers, and remote internet access, maintaining frequent contact between the certified applicator and the uncertified staff need not be a problem. Such technologies permit immediate contact. No pesticide applicator, certified or uncertified, should be without such communication devices today. So we understand we're going to need a written security plan that includes well-defined communication, and that's going to be between the supervisor and the applicator, as we talked about here. Obviously, everybody has a cell phone nowadays, so just make sure you're staying in touch with each other. As we keep talking about, that certified supervisor and the uncertified applicators need to make sure they stay in touch, because whether we're dealing with security or anything to do with the applications themselves, communication is going to be the key. And as you can see in the image on the screen, we're showing the certified supervisor on the left and the uncertified person on the right. You can see how they have a smile on their face. The point we're making here is make sure you have good and open communication. Make sure you treat each other with respect, and make sure that you don't give anybody the impression that they can't call you. If you get to the point where there's animosity between the supervisor and the uncertified person, it's only going to lead to issues out there in the field. Let's talk about public and customer communications. The importance of professionalism to a successful business cannot be overstated. A professional person or company must strive for excellence. Professionalism deals not only with how you and your equipment look, but also with how you deal with other employees, customers, the public, and in some cases the media. This can all be summed up as your professional image. We've been talking a lot about relationships here and how you conduct yourself. Just remember, how you look, how you dress is a really big part of this. How your equipment looks is a big part of this. If you go out in clothes that look unkept, look unwashed, or you're wearing something with stains all over it, it's not going to be a good image. At the same point, if your equipment has pesticides all over it, maybe you were pouring some pesticide concentrate in a tank and some of it splashed out and it dried up on the outside of the tank, that's not going to look good to the public. So just make sure that you're presenting yourself in the correct way, and make sure when dealing with other employees, customers, and even the public and the media, make sure you have your professional image on. If you don't, it's only going to lead to a bad name for you and a bad reputation for the company itself. This professionalism includes continuing education, keeping up with current pesticide regulations, knowing enough to ask for outside help when you do not have all the answers, knowing the safety and environmental aspects of the job, and taking the initiative to communicate with your customers. What the public hears from the receptionist, technician, and pesticide applicator helps form their opinion of the company as much as do the final results. And this just kind of sums up professionalism. You got to keep up with the continuing education, you got to know when to ask for help, and you have to communicate well with the public, because they are judging you on your communication and your knowledge and the whole 9 yards of how you interact with them as a whole. Pesticide applicators must never give their customers or other members of the public the impression the pesticide products they use are safe, or imply the products or services they offer are safer than those used by other companies. Creating a professional image begins with the vocabulary used by employees. It is important to use terminology about pests and pesticides the public can understand. Never use phrases such as environmentally friendly, safe for children and pets, safer, and harmless when referring to pesticide products or to the services offered by a pesticide applicator. Just keep this in mind, especially those of you that are taking core exams. You're not ever going to be able to say a product is safe, because the reality is anything that ends in the word side does mean death. CIDE, side, that suffix does mean death. So the reality is the products are not going to be safe. You just have to come up with good terminology for your customers to understand. We're using these products in the safest way possible. We're doing our best to protect you and your family, but you can't use these terms as we just talked about here, because that would be going against federal law. Also, avoid using the terms organic, natural, or least toxic, because these terms lack a common definition and are likely to confuse your customers. Pesticide applicators must not refer to EPA and state registered products as EPA approved or state approved. Such references can give the public the impression no risk are associated with the use of the pesticide products, and these agencies endorse, approve, or recommend the use of particular products. Don't say, "We only use EPA approved products." Even though it's true, it is still misleading. Acceptable terminology may include describing the product as reduced risk and/or less toxic. Explain to the customer why the risk is reduced when compared with the use of a higher toxicity product. Also explain whether the product requires more applications to be as effective. Provide customers information packets that explain the risk associated with the pesticide. This may include additional information from labels or MSDS, now called SDS, or safety data sheets. Always communicate to customers the risk associated with a pesticide and provide them with additional information. It is important for pesticide applicators and pest management specialists to spend time with each customer explaining what needs to be done and why. Show customers how environmental, cultural, and physical factors can contribute to ongoing pest problems. Once again, it's your job as a pest management specialist to set the expectations with customers while also educating them. So as we can see here, the guy's talking about the use of a crack and crevice tool on a vacuum cleaner. The point being made is they only know the expectations you set and how you educate them on what you're going to be doing and why you're going to be doing it. For example, moisture, humidity, planting site, sanitation, improper plant selection, and ineffective barriers all may play a role in pest outbreaks. Do not merely tell the customer what you are spraying for, but rather show the customer the problems. Defining the what and why includes explaining product selection, how it is used, and anticipated results. As you can see here at the bottom right, explain how plants growing against the structure and moisture from watering can give ants harborage and access. One other thought on this slide. As you can see here, we have those plants growing against the structure. This is giving a superhighway for ants to enter the structure, especially when we consider not only do they have the plant to crawl up, but obviously it's being watered, so there's always a moisture source in that area. The reality is, if we don't explain and set the expectations with the homeowner that this needs to be corrected, we're never going to effectively solve that ant problem. And even if we're never going to effectively solve that ant problem because we're not taking a look and doing what we need to treat the source itself. Be factual and, above all, do not exaggerate the results your customer can expect from the treatment. Inform the customer about any post-application label instructions, such as re-entry restrictions, watering in a pesticide, or livestock grazing or feeding prohibitions, whether in the field, the garden, or a structure. Some states have mandatory pre-application notification requirements for customers or neighbors. These include chemical hypersensitivity registries currently enforced in about a dozen states. Be sure to let your customers know if the neighbors have requested notification and if there are any concerns or objections involving the use of pesticides. At a minimum, prior notification to concerned individuals shall include 1. Date and address of the scheduled application. 2. Name and telephone number of the applicator. 3. The applicator's certification, license number, where applicable. State laws and regulations may differ from these minimum notification requirements. Therefore, pesticide applicators must know what their state-specific notification requirements are before making an application. So just keep in mind, any of you that are dealing with people on the pesticide notification registry, which is what I call it, each state might call it something a little bit different, you're just going to have to make sure you understand who has to be notified, how they have to be notified, and when they have to be notified. If not, this can cause a major problem for you, especially if one of these people see you doing an application and they've not been notified. I'm going to say your state's probably going to come down on you pretty hard at that point. I'm going to say the state's probably going to be having a conversation with you at that point. Regulations in some states may require you to provide copies of labels and SDS at time of application. Such requirements usually involve applications around residential, school, and recreational property, but rarely agricultural areas. States and other governmental entities may also require posting of the treated site immediately following a pesticide application, especially when the application is made to residential and golf course turf, landscape areas, ornamental plants, school property, or public access areas, or around the perimeter of structures. A number of states, including Maryland, now have school integrated pest management (IPM) programs that require notification of school staff members and parents and posting of treated areas. Even in states where these requirements do not exist, companies often post notices at entry points to recently treated areas. This usually involves placing a small plastic flag or sign in a conspicuous place to alert people to avoid the treated area, at least until the spray is dried thoroughly. Check with your state, tribe, territory, or other pesticide regulatory agency to make sure you are in compliance with any posting requirements. To maintain good customer and public communications, consider keeping more detailed records than required by federal and state laws. Records can prove invaluable as documentation in the event of a complaint or a lawsuit against your business. Pesticide records provide all the necessary information about the pesticides and how they were actually applied, thus protecting the applicator from what may be false accusations. Additional information could include weather, nozzle sizes, spray pressures, ground speed, calibration, or any other special precautions that may have been used or taken. Records can also help determine which pesticide treatments work, which treatments do not work, and why. Record keeping is also a major tool of IPM by documenting pest sightings and population levels, pest control techniques used, and overall environmental conditions. Good records enable an applicator to make more informed pest control decisions. If medical treatment for a pesticide injury is required for humans or animals, records can provide information necessary to the medical staff for diagnosis and treatment. Good records can also document the steps that were taken to protect farm workers and the environment from pesticides. Records may also be used to respond to the public's concern regarding pesticide use. How to answer customer questions. Today, customers and other concerned individuals are likely to ask the pesticide applicator, the sales representative, or the service technician about the products that will be used to manage their pest problems. They may ask about possible effects on children, pets, property, the environment, and themselves. How you answer these questions can determine whether you have a satisfied customer. Preparing yourself and your staff to answer consumer concerns is the professional approach. A good way to familiarize every pesticide applicator and technician in the company with typical questions and answers is to discuss these during company training sessions. Role-playing by the staff members can help reinforce correct and responsible responses. If requested by the customer or anyone else inquiring about pesticides, provide web addresses and 800 phone numbers for pesticide emergencies and for pesticide information. For emergencies, contact the National Poison Control Center at 1-800-222-1222. For pesticide information, contact the National Pesticide Information Center, NPIC, at 1-800-858-7378 or at the website you see on the screen. Also, when requested by your customer or other concerned individuals, be prepared to provide the trade and common names of the pesticides and copies of the product labels and MSDS, SDS sheets. Your professional image. It takes work to achieve and maintain a professional image. As a representative of your pest management company, seek to reinforce a positive company image. Remember, your work actions reflect on your company and the entire pest management industry. Be sure to leave a positive impression. Summary. Certified applicators often supervise and instruct uncertified individuals. The minimum standard for supervision of pesticide applicators is detailed under FIFRA. According to FIFRA, certified applicators do not necessarily have to be physically present during the application. Certified applicators, however, must be aware of any state or label requirements that have stricter standards. To perform pesticide applications properly, uncertified individuals need adequate training and supervision to become competent at their task. Supervisors must be able to communicate effectively with employees as well as customers and the public. Both certified and uncertified employees must be able to address consumer questions clearly and accurately. It is a violation of the federal pesticide law to misrepresent the safety and efficacy of any pesticide. Applicators must also be aware of and follow up on any pre-application notification or posting of treatment sites required by their state. Properly training employees, enforcing security procedures, communicating effectively, and adhering to federal and state pesticide laws all contribute to a professional image. Looking and acting professional enhances consumer confidence in the pest management industry. I just want to close out by saying this. Everything we do and how we carry ourselves every day is part of our professional image. We've talked about it throughout this course, the fact that you need to be able to communicate internally between management and employees, as well as externally with customers with respect, empathy, and understanding their particular situation. So make sure you go out there, you carry yourself professionally, and let's put a great image out there for the pest management industry. Maryland Department of Agriculture, Chapter 13, Synopsis of the Maryland Pesticide Applicators Law and Regulations. Let's talk about the purpose of the law and regulations. The Maryland Department of Agriculture, MDA, Pesticide Regulation Section is designated as the lead agency for enforcement of the Maryland Pesticide Applicators Law, Annotated Code of Maryland, Agricultural Article Title V, Subtitle II, and has the following responsibilities: regulating the use, sale, storage, and disposal of pesticides, ensuring that pesticides are applied by competent individuals, establishing guidelines for the application of pesticides, and certifying pesticide applicators. The Maryland Pesticide Applicators Law was passed in 1970 after several serious pesticide poisonings that resulted from the blatant misuse of pesticides, along with the use of pesticides by untrained individuals. These individuals had no special knowledge about pesticides or about procedures to prevent harm to humans and the environment. The original law established the requirements for certification and licensing of agricultural applicators and public agencies. The law also restricted the use of certain pesticides and required a permit to sell or apply these restricted use pesticides. A major change was made to the law in 1973 regarding the certification and the licensing of businesses and applicators performing structural and ornamental and turf pest control services. Other changes to the law have taken place over the years, including the addition of several additional pest control categories, standards for the inspection of pests, training and registration of employees involved with pest control, signposting for exterior turf and ornamental pesticide applications, customer information, and sensitive individual registry. In late 1978, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, entered into a cooperative enforcement and certification agreement with Maryland to create a more uniform policy of training standards and enforcement regarding pesticides. EPA has granted the state of Maryland full primacy, giving MDA the power to enforce the federal pesticide laws as well as the Maryland law. Under the enforcement program, MDA conducts routine inspections of licensed pesticide businesses, public agencies, and restricted use pesticide dealers. Inspections include the review of pesticide application records, restricted use pesticide sales records, safety equipment, storage areas, application equipment and vehicles, anti-siphon devices, and employee training records. Use observations are also conducted to observe actual pesticide applications to ensure compliance with label directions and state and federal regulations. Pesticide misuse, incidents, and consumer complaints are also investigated by MDA. The following information presents an abridged version of the regulations for a quick reference of the key requirements. It is not intended as a substitute for the actual regulations. For more detailed information, readers should obtain a copy of the Code of Maryland Regulations 15.05.01, regulations pertaining to the Pesticide Applicators Law, and/or Code of Maryland Regulations 15.05.02, regulations pertaining to integrated pest management and notification of pesticide use in a public school building or on school grounds. Both publications are available from the Maryland Department of Agriculture, Pesticide Regulations Section 50, Harry S. Truman Parkway, Annapolis, Maryland. The zip code is 21410, or on the internet through the department's website at www.mda.state.md.us, or directly under the Office of the Secretary of State, Division of State Documents, at the website listed below. Next, we'll talk about general regulations. Pesticides must be used in strict accordance with label directions. Anti-siphon devices or backflow preventers are required on all pest control equipment to prevent the flow of a pesticide into a water system. Pesticide applicators must consider alternative pest control measures such as mechanical, cultural, and biological control. Precautions must be observed in the handling, use, storage, and disposal of pesticides and their containers to prevent off-target movement and/or harm to humans, animals, and the environment. As you can see below, we're showing mechanical control by showing a vent that's wide open with the before picture and a vent that's sealed up in the after picture on the right. Safety equipment indicated on the pesticide label must be provided for the protection of pesticide applicators. MDA must be notified immediately of any accident or spill involving a pesticide. If a pesticide concentrate is temporarily stored or transported in a service container, the container must have a securely attached label with the following information: common or chemical name of pesticide, U.S. EPA registration number, signal word, danger, warning, or caution, and percent of concentration. If a pesticide that does not require further dilution is stored or transported in a service container as an in-use dilution, its container, excluding application equipment, must have a securely attached label listing the following information: common or chemical name of the pesticide preceded by the words diluted or in-use concentrate, U.S. EPA registration number, signal word, danger, warning, or caution, and percent of concentration. A copy of the pesticide label must be on hand at the time of pesticide application. Each vehicle carrying pesticides or pest control devices must have the business name and business license number displayed on both sides of the vehicle. It is a violation to apply a pesticide to the property of any person without the express permission of the property's owner or other person with authority to exercise control, management, or possession of the property. If a pesticide is temporarily stored in a container other than the original service container, the container must have the following information securely attached: common name or chemical name of the pesticide, U.S. EPA registration number, signal word, and percent concentration. Although the trade name is not required, it can be a useful piece of information. Remember, never store pesticides in food or beverage containers as seen below. In addition, the service container below is not properly identified. General storage requirements. All pesticide storage areas must meet the following minimum requirements. Take a look at the image on this screen. You can see what a properly organized pesticide storage area should look like. Storage areas must be locked and secured to prevent unauthorized entry. Pesticides should be stored in a separate building or at a minimum, physically separated by a barrier from food, feed, and fertilizer. Each storage area must be posted with a warning sign. Pesticides must be stored in a dry, well-ventilated area. Pesticide storage areas must be kept clean. All pesticide containers must be labeled and free of leaks and tears. Each storage area must have an appropriate fire extinguisher. There must be enough absorbent material available to handle the spill of the largest container in storage, and storage areas must be at least 50 feet from any water well or have secondary containment. Transport requirements. All pesticide containers and application equipment must be secured to prevent shifting or release of pesticides. Pesticides shall not be placed or carried in the same compartment as the driver, food, or feed, unless in a manner that provides adequate protection for safety and health of passengers. A pesticide container cannot be used for any purpose other than containing the original product unless the label states otherwise. Let's talk about pesticide information for the customer. When a pesticide is applied, or at the time a customer enters into a contract for pest control, the licensee must provide the customer with the following written information: name of the licensee, Maryland Pesticide Business License Number, licensee's telephone number, Maryland Poison Center telephone number 1-800-222-1222, common name of the active ingredient applied, and one of the following: an original or legible copy of the current pesticide product label, or an original or legible copy of that portion of the current pesticide product label or labeling that contains precautionary statements regarding hazards to humans or animals and environmental hazards, if any, or a document containing appropriate health, safety, or precautionary information taken from the pesticide label and approved by MDA before its distribution. Pesticide licensing and certification requirements. A pesticide business license is required of each business providing pest control service. The business license is obtained for MDA by completing an application, designating a certified pest control applicator, providing proof of insurance, paying a $150 fee, and renewing annually on July 1st. A pest control consulting license is required of any business providing pest inspections or identification of pests, or making pesticide recommendations. The consulting license is obtained from MDA by completing an application, designating a certified pest control consultant, paying a $150 fee, and renewing annually on January 1st. A not-for-hire license is required of facilities where pest control services are performed by the owner or employees on the facility's property, where the property is open to or routinely used or enjoyed by members of the public. This applies to private golf courses and country clubs whose employees apply either general or restricted use pesticides in the maintenance of the course. The not-for-hire license is obtained from MDA by completing an application, designating a certified pest control applicator, paying a $150 fee, and renewing annually on July 1st. A public agency permit is required of any public agency, a unit of local, state, or federal government whose employees apply pesticides. The permit is obtained from MDA by completing an application, designating a certified public agency applicator, and renewing annually on July 1st. Private applicator certification is required of any farmer, nurseryman, etc., who intends to use a restricted use pesticide on his or her own property for the purpose of producing an agricultural commodity. Private applicator certification is obtained from MDA by passing an examination and paying a $7 fee. Recertification must be renewed every 3 years by re-examination or by participating in an MDA-approved training session within 12 months before expiration of the current certificate. Commercial applicator certification for pest control applicators, pest control consultants, and public agency applicators is obtained from MDA by completing an application, having 1 year experience, or a degree in a science-related field of study acceptable to MDA, passing an examination on core and category material, and paying a $75 base fee, plus a $25 fee for each additional pest control category. Certification must be renewed each year on July 1st or by January 1st for consultants by participating in an MDA-approved training session within the past year or by re-examination. Each place of business providing pest control services or pesticide applications involving either general use or restricted use pesticides must have a business license issued by the Maryland Department of Agriculture and at least one individual certified in each of the pest control categories in which they are providing services. Public agencies are required to have a permit and also must have a certified applicator if pest control is being performed on public property by an employee of a government agency. On this screen, you're seeing a quick example of a public agency applicator certificate. Let's talk about pest control employees. Within 30 days of employment, all employees who perform pest control services must be registered with the MDA by providing the employee name, social security number, and a 1-inch color photo, and by submitting verification of training. Non-certified employees must complete a training program within 30 days of employment and before registration with MDA. The training program must include the following topics: pesticide laws and regulations, label comprehension, safety and emergency procedures, proper pesticide handling and storage, environmental and health concerns, integrated pest management, IPM principles, pest identification and control recommendations, and pesticide application techniques. An employee who has not successfully completed training in accordance with the aforementioned conditions may perform pest control services if a certified applicator or registered employee is physically present at the time and place the pesticide is applied by the untrained employee. Each employee of a commercial business or public agency that is involved with sales or service must receive training and obtain an ID card issued by the Maryland Department of Agriculture within 30 days of hiring. Let's talk about record-keeping requirements. Maryland requires that pesticide application records be maintained for a period of 2 years and made available to the Maryland Department of Agriculture upon request. Private applicators, commercial applicators, pest control consultants, and public agencies must keep records on all pesticides applied or recommended. Commercial applicators, pest control consultants, and public agencies must also keep records of all pest identifications made. The records must be held for 2 years to be available to MDA on request. The following must be recorded when applicable: name of applicator or consultant, date of application, recommendation, or pest identification, pest and type of plant, animal, or structure, acreage, number of plants or animals, or a description of or square footage of structures, address of treated property, common name and EPA registration number of pesticides used or recommended, rate of concentration of pesticide used or recommended, total amount of pesticide used, EPA registration number of the product, type of equipment used, time of day of application, wind direction and estimated velocity, and weather conditions at the site when the pesticide was applied. This information is not required if the application consists of baits and bait stations or is made inside or within 3 feet of a structure. Items marked with an asterisk are required to be recorded by commercial applicators, pest control consultants, and public agencies, but are not required for private applicators. Dealers who sell or distribute restricted use pesticides must maintain records on the sale or distribution of restricted use pesticides for 2 years and make them available to MDA on request. The following information must be recorded: name of pesticide or pesticide sold or distributed, including formulation, quantity sold or distributed, date of sale or distribution, name and address of purchaser or receiver, and name and address of certified applicator if different from above. Additional requirements. Signs must be posted at the time of application whenever a pesticide is applied to a lawn or exterior landscape plant. Signs must be posted at primary entrances to the property treated, or in the case of spot treatments, at the site of application. There are variances for golf courses, parks, cemeteries, and similar sites. The sign must be 4 inches by 5 inches in size and conform to a specific layout and design. The following information must be written on the back of the sign: business name or agency name making the application, date of application, and business or agency telephone number. MDA maintains a list of individuals who have a medical condition that may be aggravated by the application of a pesticide. Individuals on the list must be notified prior to any pesticide application that is made to a contiguous or adjacent property of a registered individual. This requirement only pertains to those businesses or public agencies that are licensed or permitted in Category 3 ornamental and turf. Pest inspections must be performed in accordance to a set of standards. Each inspection must include a visual observation and thorough examination of the readily accessible areas, objects, materials, structures, or part of the structures that are inspected. The inspector must report all findings in writing and include any findings or visible evidence of the target pest. Any inspection for a wood-destroying insect must include a diagram of the structure showing the locations where the pest was found. Inspections being performed for a property transfer or loan must be conducted by sounding and probing readily accessible structural members for the presence of wood-destroying insects using an inspection form MD-1. Copies of all inspection reports must be maintained for 2 years and made available to MDA upon request. Let's talk about violative acts and penalties. MDA may suspend, revoke, or deny any license, certificate, permit, or registered employee identification card for violating any provision of the Maryland Pesticide Applicators Law and Regulations or the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, FIFRA. Refer to Section 15.05.01.10.2 through 15.05.01.1014 of the regulations for further violations. Any person violating any provision of the Pesticide Applicators Law or Regulations is guilty of a misdemeanor and, upon conviction, is subject to $1,000 or imprisonment up to 60 days. In lieu of or in addition to suspension of the license, permit, or certificate, the Secretary of Agriculture may impose a penalty of not more than $2,500 for a first violation and not more than $5,000 for each subsequent violation. The total penalties imposed on an individual for violations that result from the same set of facts and circumstances may not exceed $25,000. Maryland has a set of standards that must be followed when conducting pest inspections. Each inspection must include a visual observation and thorough examination of readily accessible areas, which include sounding and probing. Integrated pest management and notification requirements for pesticide applications to public school buildings and grounds. Legislation was passed in 1998 and 1999, which requires Maryland's public schools to adopt integrated pest management (IPM) systems and to develop parental and staff notification programs for pesticide applications made in school buildings or on school grounds. The following is a summary of the regulations developed to implement these laws. Each county board of education must implement in its schools an integrated pest management (IPM) system approved by MDA. A broad definition of IPM is a pest control program that A. utilizes inspections and B. incorporates different methods of pest control such as sanitation, structural repairs, and other non-chemical methods, and pesticides when warranted to C. keep pests from causing economic, health-related, or aesthetic damage. Each school system must designate a contact person to answer questions about the pest management program and to maintain a file of pesticide product labels and material safety data sheets, MSDS, now SDS. At the beginning of each school year, public schools must send a notice including information about pesticides used in schools and on school grounds to the parent or guardian of each student in primary and secondary schools. The requirements for how pest control programs are conducted on the property of Maryland's public schools and the notification of the use of a pesticide on school property are contained in the Code of Maryland Regulations, COMAR 15.05.02, regulations pertaining to integrated pest management and notification of pesticide use in a public school building or on school grounds. Schools must provide notification at least 24 hours before a pesticide is applied or within 24 hours after an emergency pesticide application is made to all parents or guardians of elementary school students and staff members employed by elementary schools, and to parents or guardians of middle school or high school students and staff members employed by these institutions who have submitted a written request to receive notice of pesticide applications. The information to be provided to the above individuals includes common name of the pesticide applied, location, time, and date of application, description of potential adverse effects listed on the Material Safety Data Sheet MSDS, now SDS or Safety Data Sheets for the pesticide, a statement that EPA recommends that persons who are potentially more sensitive should avoid any unnecessary pesticide exposure, and reason for emergency application, if applicable. For pesticide applications made on school grounds, the notice of planned date and time of application may specify that weather conditions or other extenuating circumstances may cause the actual date of application to be postponed to a later date or dates. If the actual date of application is more than 14 days later than the original planned date of the application, a new notice must be issued. Middle schools and high schools must provide in-school notification by oral announcements or written notice before a pesticide is applied in a school building or on school grounds. A sign or notice must be posted at the primary entrance to the school or in a central location, must remain for at least 48 hours after an application, and must include the following information: the statement, caution, pesticide application, common name of pesticide applied, location and date of pesticide application, contact person for additional information, including information of potential adverse effects. When a pesticide application is made on school grounds, a sign must be posted at the time of the application at each primary access to the school property. If a spot or limited area pesticide application is made, a sign may be posted at the location where the pesticide application was made. The sign must remain posted for at least 48 hours following the application. Registration of pesticides. In addition to federal registration, all pesticide products distributed, sold, or transported in Maryland must be registered with the Maryland Department of Agriculture's State Chemist Section. The Maryland Pesticide Registration and Labeling Law was passed in 1938, Annotated Code of Maryland, Agriculture, Article, Title 5, Subtitle 1, and requires a distributor of a pesticide product to register every pesticide product each year with the state chemist section before that product can be sold or distributed in the state. The Maryland Department of Agriculture, MDA, Pesticide Regulation Section is designated as the agency responsible for the enforcement of pesticide laws and regulations within the state of Maryland. This includes regulating the use, sale, storage, and disposal of pesticides, ensuring that pesticides are applied by competent individuals, establishing guidelines for the application of pesticides, and certifying pesticide applicators. MDA has also been given the authority to enforce the federal pesticide laws by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. While states can regulate the use of pesticides, their requirements cannot be more lenient than the federal requirements. In Maryland's case, many of the requirements are more stringent than those contained in the federal regulations, including the certification requirements, record keeping, storage and transport of pesticides, to name a few. Other requirements are not covered by federal regulations and go beyond them, such as training and registration of sales and service employees involved with pest control services, customer information, posting of signs, the sensitive individual registry, standards for conducting wood-destroying insect inspections, and the integrated pest management and notification requirements for Maryland public school districts. Like the federal regulations, Maryland's requirements are designed to further protect the public and the environment from potential adverse effects of pesticides. It is every applicator's responsibility to be familiar and comply with both Maryland's and the federal laws and regulations regarding the use of pesticides. While this chapter provides a summary of Maryland's pesticide regulations, applicators should not rely on this information but need to consult the regulations pertaining to the pesticide applicator's law in order to ensure that they are in compliance. Congratulations, you have completed the course. Please proceed to the exam to receive your credit.